Hi, thanks everyone. By way of brief introduction, I'm Karen Panter. I'm horticulture specialist in plant sciences. My job, as I mentioned a minute ago, is, let's just say, diverse today. Today is a good day. But I've already been to an extension specialist meeting and answered a couple of extension emails, as well as a student email regarding graduate school, So that's how my days kind of go. Mackenzie knows because she's right in next door in our building. Her office is next to mine. I teach. 25% of my job is instruction. So I teach basically one course a semester, although next fall I'm cheating. I have 3 on the books, so we'll see if they all fill. I don't know if they all will. Half of my job is extension, so I spend an awful lot of time in front of audiences. This particular audience is a little different because I'm used to talking to horticulturists and commercial horticultural growers and producers, but this is good for me to get out of my little horticultural box. Anybody recognize this area? You probably walk by it a lot. Yeah. That is my project. That's on the west side of Old Main. This was last summer. Little advertisement there. That's a All-America Selections garden that I am in charge of that we'll be planting probably the first week of June. 50% extension, 25 teaching, 20 research, and 5% miscellaneous. So my job is just, and this is not unusual in agriculture. Many other colleges and departments in any land-grant institution are pretty much research teaching. That's not the way we are. So that's why I have such a diverse position, but it actually works. One section, I don't spend a whole lot of time worrying about how many hours I devote to any one thing because my extension spills into my teaching, which spills into my research, which then feeds back into the classroom. So it all kind of melds together, so I don't really worry about it a whole lot anymore. I have been teaching Plant 2025 online for probably 15 years. Now, I meant to look it up before I came over, and I completely forgot. But I started doing this partially because of my extension appointment. It is a little difficult to escape and do extension programming when you have a regularly scheduled class. So that's the reason that 2025, which is our introductory horticultural science course, is taught online. And another reason was because we have an awful lot of our extension educators out in the state, as well as commercial people, master gardeners, the general public, besides our student population who are interested in horticulture. And so I've got students in this class from all over the country and the world sometimes, depending on the semester. So I've been doing this a long time, and which is fine. But if you know horticulture, you know how hands-on it is. And it is really tough to do a horticulture class without some hands-on component. Originally, PLNT 2025 was a 4-hour course, which included a lab component when it was taught on campus. When I started teaching it online, we split it out into a 3-hour online 2025 plus a completely separate class, 2026, which is the lab component, which I also teach. And so the students who are horticulture minors have to take both, but they don't have to take them at the same time. And so it does help. So what I did, because a lot of the students in the online class are not able to get into the lab because they're off campus, we added the home labs a few years ago. Probably about 10 or 12 years ago, I started doing these. And what I do is I suggest, and I teach my classes completely differently than most other classes, which we can get into later. Unless there's questions about it now. But what I do is require them to do any three of the 10 available. And the 10 are these. This is actually a screen grab from YO courses, and this is what the students actually see So there's 10 of them. Each is due on a particular day, and they are not accepted late. Since they have their choice of any 10, they're locked. You know, they don't have to tell me, and they just turn them in whenever they're ready. But if they miss one, then they can still do several others. So they are not accepted late, but they have their choices of plant structures, insect disease, turf, landscape, edible, pruning, media fert, and then 2 propagation, and then the last one is just a florist crops section. And they can pick any 3. They don't have to tell me. All they do is make sure they follow the instructions and then turn them in on time, online, of course. And they're all worth 60 points. This is the, yeah, bless you, section from this isn't in the, yeah, this is in the syllabus. This is actually from last fall, and I teach this class every fall. So 17s are available. I just didn't get them put up here. But there's 60 points each, 180 points, any 3 of the 10 labs, and these are the due dates so that they can, and students often pick them according to interest. They may pick them according to when they have other assignments due in other classes that they want to avoid these, or vice versa. There's any number of reasons that they can pick. Some of them just do the first 3 and then they're done, which is fine. That makes life a lot easier for me. So this is how they're strategized. And I don't get them started until later in September, and then the last one is usually due in early December. And they're also required to submit photo of not only whatever they did for that particular lab, but also including themselves. So a selfie of whatever they did, so I know. And it tells them, you know, if you don't have a photo, da 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 da. And I also include in the information, this is the first half of the grading rubric. Each section, all of them are set up according to the scientific format: introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion, conclusions, and literature cited. And each section is worth 10 points, thus the 60 points. And so this is how they can look at the rubric and say, oh, I screwed that up. That's why I didn't get all my points on that particular section. And I grade each section separately. So they'll get maybe 8 of 10 on the introduction, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how all of that works. So they can look at the grading rubric. This is the second half of it. And this is where the 2 sections that they have the most difficulty with are this one, which answers the question why they got the results they did or why they found what they did, and the lit cited. They have a terrible time with literature citations and finding literature, which is really not hard. But those are the 2 sections that give them fits. So. This is basically what they get. This happens to be the plant structures page, and it tells them specifically the point allocations, what questions they need to answer in that particular section. And also, one thing that I started this past fall, which a couple of students really liked, I remember academic affairs within the last year or 2, there's been an emphasis in allowing students to turn in work in various formats other than writing. And I had a couple who just loved doing videos. So all of their 3 home labs were done in video format, which was fine as long as they answered these questions and, you know, followed the same, and they were graded according to the same rubric. And they could show me their pictures and everything. And one in particular just absolutely loved doing the videos. And so I will continue that. They can also, I've had some who are very creative and use PowerPoint presentations to do them and do a voiceover with them. There's any number of ways. So they don't have to do this just in writing. And that has helped, I think, some of the students. And another thing that I do, They have to use at least 3 references for each of the 3 home labs, but I don't allow them to use .coms. And anybody have any idea why I say no to the .coms? What's that? They're commercial. Sometimes the information is really, really iffy, especially in horticulture. And so they are not allowed to use any .coms. They have to be .edus, .orgs, .govs, something like that, which is actually not a problem, but they kind of think, what else is there? You know, and then I show them some web resources where there's actually a horticultural search engine that you can use that only gives you back .orgs and .edus. So if I point them in the right direction, usually they can figure it out. So what I thought I'd do is show you just the intro and materials and methods of each of the 10. Anybody have any idea what that is? Little horticultural lesson here. Some of you know. That's a mealybug, which is a creature that they're evil. They're really evil. So this is the insect and disease one and what they actually have to do. And another thing that they have to figure out is what's an agronomic crop and what a horticultural crop is, and there is a difference. And then they have to answer some questions about those particular insects or diseases they found. We have a lot of interest in turf grass in our department. We have a fair number of students who are really interested in turf grass management, golf course management, that kind of thing. So I include a turf home lab. And what they do in this one is go to a retailer to look for turf grass seeds and then give us some information on those. This is actually my front yard, but this is another section. We have a whole bunch of students who are very interested in landscaping and landscape maintenance, installation, design, that kind of thing. And so they can go in their community and describe the area. And I don't ask them to specify particular plant material. The reason is that in an introductory class, they probably don't even have an idea what the plants are. So I don't even go there. Plant identification is a whole other thing. So this is another one that a lot of our students really like to do. Edible crops, of course, there's a huge contingent that are interested in fruit and vegetable production. And so we include one of those home labs for this particular section. And they're actually supposed to find 2 fruits and 2 vegetables, and they need to know the difference. And that is another horticultural lesson that they get to learn in this one. Pruning, a lot of students are really interested in pruning, go figure. So we have a pruning lab and they learn about the equipment utilized, the plant material, basic methods of pruning, what's a good pruning job, what's not a good pruning job, etc. In this one, they do have to figure out what the plant actually is. Growing media and fertilizer, these are really important aspects of horticultural, either backyard gardening or commercial production. This is a big deal. And so in this case, they can go to wherever they can find a couple of growing media bags and a couple of fertilizer bags and learn how to read the labels, because most people have no clue how to read a label on a fertilizer bag. Seed propagation, this is a really important one, and this one and the next one on vegetative propagation are 2 that require several weeks of advance work, and some of them figure that out, and it is in the instructions early on, but they require several weeks in order to get results from seed germination and the next one, which you'll see. And the instructions are a little more complicated because we divide the seeds and put them into 3 different locations based on temperature and light. And the idea is to determine what combination of factors is important for the particular seed that they chose for successful germination. So that's what that one's about. And then this one is using stem cuttings, which, yes, These are actually stems. Potato tubers are underground, swollen stem tissue. And they are to try to root 2 in water, 2 in something else, and then 2 in soil from outside. And that one also takes a few weeks to get some results on. And invariably, there's some that start them a week in advance, and then they're really disappointed when the paper's due and they still haven't gotten any results, which is fine. What I grade them on is their explanation of why they were not successful, and it can be the time factor, it can be this plant, they just didn't do enough research to tell that this particular plant doesn't root from stem cuttings, or whatever. There's any number of reasons. The last one is, I am a complete and total flower nerd. I am a very unapologetic flower child, so I got my start in this business growing cut flowers, carnations and roses and alströmerias, so that's why I'm partial to these things. But in this case, what they are to do is go find a local retailer and then compare the products that they have, the floral crops, and how they're marketed, what they look like, any information like that. So that's the 10. And actually this has been a really good exercise for me, because what I found in rereading the evaluations from the last few umpteen years is that they don't really comment on their own about the benefit or not of doing the home labs. Unfortunately, with the new online evaluation system, it's really hard to ask them specific questions about a particular part of your course. So what I'm going to do is ask them at the end of the class. We do a big long discussion about what did you learn about horticulture, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm going to pointedly ask them about the home labs this time around. Otherwise, they don't really comment on it. These 3 comments showed up as really good ones. They like the hands-on. The detailed instructions, I can do that. I can fix the instructions so that they're a little more user-friendly or more explicit. That's not hard. And then this one was unsolicited, but I really like this particular comment because it doesn't address home labs per se, but it does address the skill sets that we go through during the class, which includes the home labs. So that's the basic idea behind the home lab thing. They're not hard to grade. Since there's only a few each week, I don't have 30. I cap the enrollment at 30, even though usually we have more than that, just because it's just overwhelming if there's more than that. Part of the reason for only requiring 3 of the 10, I used to require 5, and it just drove me nuts because I didn't have time to really devote to scoring them the way I wanted to. The way I set up my classes, all of them, is that I don't do the midterm final thing. I have never liked that system. I think it's very stressful for students. It's stressful for us. It puts a huge burden on everyone at 2 or 3 times during the semester. So I don't follow that model. What I do is weekly quizzes. We have 14 25-point weekly quizzes, and their 2 lowest scores can drop out at the end of the semester, and they're not negotiable. So if you miss one, it's a 0, and we'll just drop it at the end of the semester. Because invariably somebody gets sick or they're away and can't have internet access or whatever. So between the 14 quizzes, the 3 home labs, and then we also have weekly discussions, we have a plethora of assignments times 30 students. And so that's why I require 3 instead of 5 or 10 of the home labs. It's just almost too overwhelming. There's a whole boatload of, it's almost 1,000 assignments when I finally get through. So, but this home lab system is, I think it works. I'm open to suggestions and questions, how, and if it might be utilized in other disciplines, which I think it certainly can. I'm a big advocate of online teaching and online education. It doesn't work really well for some disciplines, but even for this, it seems to work pretty well. So, questions, comments?
How long have you been doing the home lab thing?
Probably about 12 years. A long time. It's, yeah.
Are minors still required to take the lab on campus? So this does not replace the campus lab?
No, the lab is set up a little differently. I mean, the basic topics are similar, but in fact, one thing I'm doing this summer, I have 2 students who cannot take the lab next fall because I only offer one section of it on Tuesday afternoons, and they have a time conflict with a different class. So what I'm doing for them is this summer they are signing up for what is it they're signing, Problems in Plant Sciences is PLNT 4975, and they are doing all 10 of the home labs in lieu of 2026 next fall, and then we'll just substitute the credit, so, which is an email to our degree analyst. That's not hard. So that's another way that the home labs can actually be utilized, is for those students who can't take the lab for whatever particular reason. One of the students who can't take it is place-bound, and the other has a huge time conflict. And so I said, well, do all 10 of these this summer, because the topics are basically the same. So, good questions. Yeah.
Is there like a resource that comes with the class in terms of like a book, or is it all?
Yes, the text, I should have brought the text. Yes, in fact, I'm changing textbooks this year, which is always tricky. But yeah, it's horticulture principles and practices that I'm switching to this spring. It's not terribly different from the previous one. It's far less expensive, which is always an issue. The one I had been using is a $150 textbook, and I just can't. I'm sorry. It's a good book, but yes, there is a resource, and that book is required for the class. So, there isn't for the lab. I don't even have a lab handout. Yeah, I just give them the assignments the prior week, hand out the papers, and off we go. So, yeah. Yes, Donna.
Finally, what's the end up more of the class doing like the last 3 or the last 4?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And that, they just put it off, and there's always those who say, "Oh, can I turn it in late?" No. You've had all semester to get these done. This is plan ahead. And that's the one thing online that is the hardest for students to deal with, is the self-time management thing, and getting things done when they need to. Have you heard this before? Yeah. Yeah. And frequently they'll wait and do the last 3. Unfortunately, 2 of the last 3 require several weeks to get done, the 2 propagation ones. And the florist crops is pretty easy, but the other 2, and then they wait until Thanksgiving,
Were these the original 10 labs that you first?
No, they've tweaked over the years. Yeah, I had included, what other subjects did we have in there? Sometimes I put the turf in, sometimes I don't, depending on the students in the class, because sometimes I don't have turf students, and sometimes this semester I've got a bunch. So, and last fall I had several. There have been other ones. I had a specific vegetable one and a specific fruit one. I think I had an organic production one at one time that just kind of baffled them. That one was a little tricky, so as you might guess, Mackenzie teaches or is working on an organic production course. So But yeah, they have changed. And as things go on, you know, I can always tweak them a little bit. I would love to include having them go to a commercial nursery or a commercial garden center or a commercial greenhouse or orchard or something. Unfortunately, those aren't always available, and I never know where the students are going to be. And so I would love to include some other stuff, but I just can't because the students may not have access to them. The stuff that we have on these 10 is usually readily available in their community, and they don't have to buy anything. A lot of them do. They'll just buy the stuff and then go home and finish the lab, you know, rather than doing it in the store, which I can get. Yeah, I get that. So.
That's another one for things. You might be only from just choices, you know. I mean, so if we had access to a whatever.
Right. Yeah. Just say a commercial operation. Yeah. Yeah.
They could do that if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Or, you know, maybe if you gave them, I mean, you're already giving them options, but you could even give them
Within one. Yeah. Give them several
few
options. Yeah.
within it. And if they had it, then they wouldn't be forced to, but they could.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good idea. Yeah. That's my background is greenhouse crop production, and so I teach 2 classes on greenhouse stuff. And I would love for them to be able to go to a good size commercial, which we have in Wyoming, but they're in Sheridan and Lander and Cody. You know, we have Windmill Hill here, which is an option, of course. But so yeah, that's a good idea. I could offer them several options within one of the home labs. Yeah, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that. See, this is good. Yeah.
Elegant about what you're doing. Is that, you know, one of the responses to online teaching, particularly the science classes online, what do we do about labs?
Yeah.
And I love the way you're using the resources that are available in the community, so that your students aren't having to, you know, concoct something in the kitchen, or
Right.
you don't have to send them a lab kit.
Right.
They have access to the resources that are available to them, which in the long run, it probably makes them more practical and relevant anyway. And I'm not a scientist. I'm sitting here thinking about how transferable is this approach. I mean, obviously, there must be clearly some disciplines to which it's transferable, but you know, how many disciplines could think about exactly what you're doing?
Right.
You've got access to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want it to be a burden on them. That's why I don't require them to buy anything. If they choose to, that's fine. You know, the edible lab, they can have that for dinner, you know, that's fine. So that was, yeah. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. One, back to the question about other options, what if I've had other one, and one was composting, which I have removed. And the reason for that, it was a kitchen composting thing, which you can do. You can do it in your own kitchen in a coffee can, or so just poke a few holes in it, you know, turn it, keep it wet, da 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 da. But I had some students who would put in these very strange things in their compost, including things like oatmeal and meat scraps, and then they would come up with these smelly, and they would just complain about how awful their little compost thing was. And I'm thinking, and they had the instructions about what not to put in. And so I don't do that one anymore, because students just thought they could compost anything, which is not the case. So that was an example of one that, after the oatmeal, I said, I think we won't do this one again. So, yeah. But I'm sorry.
No,
I was going to say, you know, the thing about horticulture is that it's all around us and we don't even know. People just kind of take it for granted. And one of the things that comes up repeatedly at the end of the semester when we do the what did you learn thing, you know, they're always kind of astonished at how broad horticulture actually is, and that it really is around us every day. We eat horticultural crops daily. We live, we've all got grass and trees and so that's all horticultural stuff. And whether or not they really realize it, but one of the things that comes out in this course is the realization, and they don't quite take it as much for granted as they did prior, which is, that's always good to read. I like to read those kind of comments. But it has, there are actually some online plant propagation classes, believe it or not. Cornell actually offers a plant prop online class. What they do is they provide kits of the materials, and they send the kits to each of the participants. And I've thought about that budgetarily and logistically with everything else going on. You should see my desk. Yeah, you can't see my desk. I mean, it's just, so I have not done that, even though I suppose I could. So there are things that you can do. There are online plant identification courses where it's heavily video, photo, that kind of thing. So you can actually do quite a number of the sciences using the online thing. I'm not sure I'd tackle chemistry. That's probably not a good candidate. Organic, you might get away with it just with the classroom part, but the lab, no way. So there are some disciplines that I would probably shy away from. But a lot of the horticultural stuff actually lends itself pretty well. The last one I taught, last 2 falls ago, I taught greenhouse design and management online. And I actually had one student drop it because he said if it had been in the classroom, he would have stayed in the class. But he said, since it's online, no way. So I said, well, I'm sorry. So I'm teaching it in the classroom this fall. We'll see how that works. So the other thing I do kind of as a sidelight is with my extension appointment, my classes are heavily on Mondays and Tuesdays. The class I'm teaching this semester is a 4-hour greenhouse crop production course. We meet from 1 to 5 on Monday afternoons. And that allows me to do several things. One is field trips. We're doing 4 this semester, which the students love. We're growing our own crops. So we've got a heavy lab component mixed in with it. And then it allows me the rest of the week for all my extension stuff. Like I had to go to Lander last Friday for a talk. So, and all my classes are either Monday afternoon or Tuesday afternoon or online. So, and it works really well for me. And the students seem to think it's okay. I'm sure initially there's some shock. 4 hours, but we're not sitting the whole time. It's a class lab combination. So, and no one dropped the class this semester. So,
You give them, I got your syllabus up there.
Good.
You give them the choice of doing 3 home labs, but they're all due at specific times. You talk about that choice, as opposed to saying, here's 10 labs, pick 3. And get them done.
Otherwise, they would wait until after the first week of December, and I would have 90 home labs to grade all of a sudden. Yeah, and that's the main reason is just logistically. Yeah, because and it is self-serving. The way it is, I really am not excited about it. And this semester, I'm going to end up with 2 papers times 20 students at the end of the semester. So, so I did it to myself this time. But anyway, a lot of it is just to avoid kind of spread out the workload, which really helps me. I don't know if the students really care one way or another, but knowing I have a student myself. My son is a hort student down at Colorado State. He is the worst procrastinator. I mean, he's 25 years old, and you would think by now he would have. So, yeah, I know how the undergraduate mind works. I'm sorry?
I'm interested in your decision to, or in the degree of freedom and flexibility that you allow them. I'm beating around the bush. So what I'm thinking about is they've got these 10 labs. they know they have the 10 labs that they can choose from early in the semester, and particularly those labs that take some lead time.
Mm-hmm.
Would there be any benefit in having them commit, at least make a soft commitment to the labs that they want to complete early in the semester, so that it might encourage them to get started earlier, it might give you a little bit more, it might spread them out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe with a caveat that if you miss one deadline, you can pick up something else instead or something. Have you considered that?
I've thought about it, and I could do that, and I have not even tried it, so maybe I should try it before I decide not. There's no particular reason I don't make them tell me. It's just one more thing to keep track of. And if they miss a deadline, then I've put myself in a position where I have to remind them. And I do enough reminding as it is. We have weekly quizzes, which are always on in that class. They're Mondays. The quiz is open for 24 hours starting at midnight to midnight on Mondays. And so I remind them about that. I remind them about home labs. So it seems like I remind them about a lot of things. I could certainly do that. This way it puts the onus, the responsibility on them rather than making me have to remember who's got what due this week. Yeah. So that's partially why I have not done that.
Maybe parents that they have to do one of those three.
I have thought about that too, yes. Yeah, right. Yeah. And then, yeah, that's
Basically one, each student.
right.
You can even say you have 10, you have to do 3 of them. The first one is due here.
Right. I could say 1 September, 1 October, and 1 November would be the logical way to, that's a good idea. Yeah. Sure. Right.
The last 3, but one of them will have to be done at the end of September.
Yeah.
The way I have it set up is that you're spreading it out more than that, right?
Yeah.
Because
It's spread out over 10 weeks.
September,
Yeah.
then everybody would turn it on September 30th. And October 31st, you know.
Still won't have to call it the last
Right.
2, so you wouldn't have to do the last 3.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's an idea. Yeah. I had not thought of that. Well, I had thought of it in different terms, but I hadn't thought of it quite that way. Yeah. Yeah. That's not too much of an issue. Switching from landscape plants to printing is not, that's easy for me. That's not a big deal. So that wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, well, that's something else to think about. Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I have an question. Just to throw out and think about. Have you ever thought about having a do-it-yourself lab? So basically saying, you write the lab. What do you want to do? What do you have access to in the class? And it's more work on them actually, because they have to ask. I mean, because when I'm looking through your stuff, there's a lot of, they're all really similar, right? They have to do this, they have to do this, they have to do this. So they have a structure for a do-it-yourself lab, right? Structure there you go. Just have to go in and figure out what I don't know.
That's a really good idea. I have kind of done that with quizzes. Occasionally I'll write a question that says, you write a question. Yeah. If I can't think of anything, sometimes only in desperation, and I don't do that routinely, but I have been known to do that. That's a really good idea. Let's see what they come up with. Yeah. Well, and exactly. And some of our students are just incredibly creative and would think of things that me in a million years would never even think of. So yeah, that's a good idea.
I was interested, you had mentioned that you had removed some due to interest and added some due to interest. I didn't know how much of that was actually student fed, and then if there's a reason for not just including all of those choices, like the veggie and organics and composting, and just putting a caution sign
beware.
Because I'm looking at it, I'm like, I want to try all of them. And a lot of them are like, having students that are like, can I do extra credit?
Yeah, and I do get that question. I'll kind of answer your questions in reverse here. I do get I don't offer extra credit because they're allowed to drop 2 quizzes, and they also have their choice of any of the three of any of the 10. And so I don't, and I get nailed on that on evaluations fairly frequently. I wish you offered extra credit. Well, we offer you all sorts of options in this class. And even if I did offer extra credit, what they don't understand is that I would not allow them to do extra credit unless they had gotten everything else done. And so it's just not just because you forgot to do this assignment doesn't mean you can do extra. No, doesn't work that way. So I would be a real bear about extra credit. And I'm pretty witchy about the whole thing, and I frequently get questions, well, I missed the quiz the other day, can you open it up again? And the system doesn't let you do that real easily. It used to with e-college. I think we could. It's a headache. Yeah, but I don't really even offer the option because it's in the syllabus from day one. These are, if you miss it, get a 0, we'll just drop it at the end of the semester. So at the end of I repeatedly suggest to them during the semester too that when they drop their 2 quizzes at the end of the semester, which way is their score going to go? For the same reason I don't grade in red pen. It's a red flag, and so they think, oh yeah, my score is going to increase a few points because we're dropping these 2 zeros or these 2 low scores or whatever. And it's all up here. And your other question had to do with, why some of them were dropped. Yeah. Yeah, and some of it had to do with just the very poor results. The students just didn't get it. And no matter how much I explained to them, it just didn't seem like they really understood the composting process, or, that the composting was the one that really stands out in my head. So and some of them, there's usually somebody that does every single one. And I don't know that there's a favorite. They like the propagation ones. They like to be able to work with seeds and, stem cuttings and things like that. So they like those. There's usually a couple of them who do the turf, not a lot, just kind of depends on the makeup of the class. They all like the florist crop one, usually is because it's the last one, it's their last chance. But they seem to, they pay attention to things that they wouldn't normally pay attention to when they're purchasing flowers. But they all get done. Somebody does every single one of them. So there's usually 5 or 10 every week.
Are there things that are maybe incorporated into the weekly quizzes or discussions that you feel are like the mandatory skills that they're having to get? Or just all the optional ones? Or did you used to have a mandatory lab that they all had to do?
No, there hasn't been a mandatory lab. The discussions, we didn't really talk about the discussions. The discussions are more, actually Mackenzie can talk about this because she actually handled the discussions in this class 2 years ago. So you want to say a little bit about the discussions?
And the questions would focus on kind of whatever the module was
At the time.
For the past week or two. Was there discussions with bi-weekly, Karen?
Usually every 2 to 3. I run 5 during the semester, so 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, and kind of reflecting topics that were coming up within those modules beforehand, and kind of a way for students to talk to each other in the class and kind of engage a little bit more with the material.
And those are required. And we separate the class into usually 5 or 6 groups of 5 or 6 students, because usually there's 30-ish in the class. And so rather than have them all talking to all 29 of their peers, there's just a much smaller group. And invariably, somebody will forget. And once the discussion closes after that 2 or 3 weeks, I don't open it again. So they have an opportunity within those 2 to 3 weeks, and they're scored on their a quality of contributions and number of contributions. If they respond to their peers, that counts more than other than just saying, well, I agree, you know, this is what I think, da 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 da. And then they don't respond again. That doesn't cut it. So they get 10 points, maximum of 10 points per discussion, 50 points max total for discussions for the semester. And yeah, they're horticultural topics of interest, and usually there's 1 or 3 that just blow them off. And it's not a lot of points, but it can, you know, make it. And I don't know how to get them to I remind them weekly, you know, either email or announcement, or usually both. So that's a little bit of a frustration. But I think the discussions are important because they all don't have the same viewpoint. And it may be completely different from mine or Mackenzie's or whoever the TA might happen to be that particular semester. So it's, you know, and, you know, they back up their statements with references or information that might be valuable. So yeah, the discussions are, I haven't mastered that one yet. Not really, yeah. But then I haven't, see, this is really good, because I'm finding some holes in the questions that I need to ask them for assessment purposes. You know, those all-encompassing, lovely assessments. And I actually use all of my classes, I do pre and post quizzes for assessment purposes. Seems like I do something else for assessment. And this stuff, the home lab stuff, since it's set up with a very clear rubric, can also be utilized for assessment purposes. Yeah. No, because we are not given the option. This comes down to departmental issues. We are losing our current secretary. We have half a secretary in plant sciences who is shared with ecosystem science and management. She's leaving. We have 0 people. So I have never been at, well, when we did the paper ones, it was easy to add a question. No problem. I could ask, you know, about the, it's even hard to get information about a TA. With the online system we can do it, but it takes a little more doing on their part. So we're losing Cassie, so she's going to get all this stuff done. She's moving over to the LIFE program. But we've never been asked if we want additional questions put on the evaluation. One of my very big beefs with the online system, you don't get 100% participation. You don't even get close. What? I do. Yeah, right. And what you end up with is the students who really, really liked it and the students that really didn't, and very little in the middle. And so it's not even remotely a representation of what the students actually thought. And so I wish we'd go back to the paper. Well, online class, you know, I get it. But for my other classes that are in a classroom, boy, I'd sure like the paper. But we can do that. I can do that mid-semester. Just ask, hey, what do you think about these home labs? Or, hey, what do you think about these discussions? We need to go a different, you know what? And I just, that's me. Right. 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 Yeah, to fill out the survey. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we used to be able to see too who actually filled out the end of the online surveys or course evaluations. But now all we see is a percentage of the students who have responded. So we don't, even if we wanted to assign additional points to students who have filled out the course evaluations, we can't because we don't see who they are anymore. Yeah.
For example, if we get to 90% return rate in this class, everybody gets 5 extra.
Okay.
Extra credit.
Yeah, and I've
Right.
toyed with that. Yeah, right. And which brings up the whole extra credit thing. Well, but that's a whole different thing. Yeah, yeah. Bribery works. Yeah. Works with kids too. Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. Yeah. You guys have had some really good suggestions. I really appreciate the thoughts.
Can you talk about what problems you see with your students finding and finding resources? And do you see that more among the non-traditional students, or is it pretty much across?
The non-traditional students don't have any trouble.
Oh, all right.
The traditional students, the usual 18 to 22-year-old set, terrible time. If they can't find it on Google search, what I suggest is that they use Google Scholar. If they want to use Google, go to Google Scholar, which works. Actually, I use Google Scholar a lot. It actually is quite handy. And then I also give them, there's another one called Plant Facts, which is based at Ohio State, the Ohio State, sorry. I get corrected on that all the time from people from Ohio State University. But anyway, it's a search engine that's horticulture only, and it only pulls up .orgs, .edus, .gov publications, which is really, really, really helpful. So I steer students toward the Plant Facts. Google Scholar is helpful. But I have had students, they still do and here's another issue. Since there are all sorts of issues. Since they're all online, doing their quizzes, I make them open book, open everything. There's no way that anybody can monitor all of the students, and I don't even try. And we have caught students, who just copy, and you can tell when they're copied and pasted. And then you pull it out of their quiz and put it into Google, and up pops that you can find the publication usually within a few seconds. And I tell students, and they would, they could get an F not only on the assignment, but also for the whole course if that continues. But, I just suggest that at least put them in your own words, for crying out loud, and either that, or if you feel like you need to put something in quotes, that's fine, but cite your reference. Cite the source. How hard is that, So they have a terrible time. They do not want to have to go through the work to find references. And that's one of my biggest impediments. What's, yeah, okay.
She comes into my online classes.
That would be really helpful, because that's one thing that they are just, many of us, the SBs are where I lived in the Library of Congress system for my whole graduate career. All of my horticultural stuff was in the SB section. So I just I spent years literally in libraries. But you mentioned the SB section or the Library of Congress system to our undergraduates in the Library of Congress. It doesn't compute. And so and that's partially me. I have not spent a lot of time showing them other sources. No, and that would be awesome. Yeah, that would be great. I would love it. That would be really helpful. And I think we do have a fair number of our students who want to go on to graduate school, in which case they have to know how to do that. Yeah. So that would be really helpful. Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Yeah, there's some resources, and this is also my fault. There are a lot of resources, not only within Elbogen, but on campus that I have not really taken full advantage of, and that's one of them. I used to come to a lot of the Elbogen activities, and I really enjoyed them. But unfortunately, the Institute in May, it's prime planting week. So I'm going to be out getting my summer studies started that week, made the last couple of weeks of May and the first week of June. So unfortunately, I can't come. I'd love to, but so anyway, there's a whole, and that's on me. I just have not taken full advantage of all the resources you all. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. That would be great for this fall. Yeah. One of my old colleagues.
Librarian just for your area, subject librarian.
Right, right.
Amazing, and they come in and they teach things. It's amazing. They're
Yeah,
rock stars.
right. The library offers a huge array of resources that most of us don't take advantage of. We had a colleague years ago who is now retired, but he always included a lab section on library resources, which,
And they
yeah.
can even make like specific, so you're talking about resources and stuff, like they can go for a class and make a page that has like its own page that has all the resources. for
Oh,
their
okay,
class.
cool.
It is awesome.
Nice. Yeah, that would be, they like that one-stop shopping kind of thing. Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll be in touch. Definitely. Were there other?
I was gonna just.
Okay.
Go, Kelly.
To over 1,000 assignments, I know that, like, you know, teaching meaningful, a lot of times you have to go through a lot of grading. Is there, you have a TA, and it still takes a lot of time. Do you see any way to like change it at all to improve your workload or reduce? Or is that just kind of work?
Actually, it works pretty well. Fall is not a really late fall or late summer. September can be kind of busy. Oftentimes, I'm still collecting data from the summer for my research part. But fall really isn't too bad as far as extension speaking and all that stuff. So it actually works pretty well. But I do like the idea of having them do one lab from this group, one lab from this group, and one lab from this group. And I think I will definitely implement, because that would definitely help. And the literature actually, and I haven't read any lately, unfortunately. I've read horticultural literature, but not teaching literature lately. So, but students tend to learn better in smaller chunks, which is why I don't do the midterm and final thing. You know, which is the way every class I had as an undergrad and grad student was basically set up that way. But in the smaller weekly quiz thing, you know, it just seems to stick a little better, and it's just easier for them to grasp all these concepts in smaller bites. So that's why I do this, yeah.
And I'm just in terms of your grading, like, you do the discussions, and then are your quizzes like multiple choice or are short answers?
They're a combination, yeah. They're true, false, multiple choice, multiple answer, some short answer. Yeah, it's just kind of I try to avoid the matching ones. There's a lot of things I'm not happy with the YO courses quiz system. I grumble about it weekly. But having said that, yeah, they're a combination of, and none of the questions they're 25-point quizzes, and none of the questions are worth usually more than 4 or 5 points. Christy had something else.
I did. So I was just scrolling around your thing, and I know I could just talk to you about it also, but I thought it might be beneficial to other people. Is that so when you talk about discussions, and you're struggling with the discussions, is you know, some of your discussion prompts are super good, and some of them are kind of, well, tell me what you read. And whenever you do a discussion prompt that's like, tell me what you read, or tell me about, you know, tell me 3 things that were in this chapter, you will not get a discussion. You never will, because there's nothing to discuss. And so thinking about discussion prompts as real thought questions, right? So, and you had like some of yours are real good, I think.
And they've changed from semester to semester too. Yeah, that was probably last year.
Last fall.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, you know, does understanding plant anatomy make a better horticulturalist? How does it, or does it? I mean, that's a good question, right? That's a good discussion question, because you're not asking them like the plant anatomy section, the top of plant anatomy. So you could ask me like, what are the 3 pieces of plant anatomy? And then they would be like,
Yeah, there's
right?
nothing to,
Like,
yeah.
does it actually help or not? And that's a good question. So, you know, thinking about discussion questions as a something, like you said, they have lots of different things and lots of different experiences.
Right.
So
Right.
find questions that can bring those out instead of just kind
Right.
of saying, I mean, this one was a good one. And some
Yeah.
of the others are kind of like, you know, what.
Yeah,
Think
and-
about how you might frame the ones and the other ones. Make for better discussion.
Yeah, definitely. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Anytime you can engage me,
Yeah.
if you can ask me a question that's like, you know,
Yeah.
should you have
That's a good word. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Or cut flowers.
or cut flowers, or, you know, that one's gonna engage people like all kinds of things, you know, and so think, you know, that applies clearly.
Yeah. That's a good point.
But
Yeah.
anytime you think emotions going, yeah, it works.
Yeah, some of them really get into it. I try to avoid topics like GMOs and organic production and things like that. That just it's just polarizing. Yeah, they are, but they're very polarizing. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna cite something randomly, or if you're gonna spout a fact, it needs to be cited.
Right.
You know, I mean, you make that because it makes for pretty good discussion. And you also have to watch those discussions. I have a couple of those in my class. You have to like pay attention to them because somebody will make some kind of terribly inflammatory remark.
Right.
You really need to
Right.
know that.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. Just
Yeah, that's a good point.
Prayer
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
like, you know, one that you know are gonna go heavily off the rails and really make people crazy, and you know, just give facts. You know, try to find
Right.
more
Yeah.
towards the crazy
Okay.
side
Yeah,
of
that's a good point.
conversations.
Yeah. And even if you, I'm trying to remember the article. Oh, I do remember that article. Yeah. So maybe just pinpoint something within the article even that says, okay, there's a statement here, or this graph shows. What does this graph show? You know, what do you? Yeah. Okay.
And why?
Right. Yeah. That's
By sources that tell you at the back of your opinion. You know, that
Right.
kind of stuff really gets people going.
And particularly, perhaps, you know, it's an accurate representation, but it's deceptive. You know,
Mhm.
with this graph, and what is it, you know, what might it be communicating that it doesn't intend to communicate?
right. Right. Yeah. Good point. We'll remember that. I have no idea if I'll even have a TA this fall, so we'll see. But yeah, I can. That's easy to incorporate.
One of the
Mhm.
things is that you've got a lot of good stuff here. I mean, it's a good class. I think. I mean, I really think it's a good class. I think there's some things you can do to make it easier to find stuff, just like structurally. And get this
Probably.
stuff. So you know, if at any point, and I'm not saying it's not a good class at all. I'm just saying there's always things you can do to improve it. So if you know, if you get somewhere in the future and you're like, I think I'd like to make that a little easier so we can get around. Or how, you know, I'm sure that everybody has this feeling. I have nothing to do today. I'm going to try to redo my class. Anyway. I'm sure.
Yeah, really.
But at any rate, if you do, you know, please come and see it. We'll be happy to help you figure out how to make it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Good class. I am
Mhm.
not. But I think, I mean, every time I look at my class, I'm like, wow, I could have done that a lot better. So, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's always, and some days I do.
It's very imaginative when you're in your lab. So I love what you do in your lab and stuff. So I'm not in any way. If you taught it exactly like it is, it's bomber. I'm not saying that, but.
Most of the other thing that I do that's not, that you may not see visually is short videos to introduce the new topics.
Great. I really like that.
I got slammed for that
Really.
this past fall on the evaluations because the idea is to just give them a little bit of an inkling about their instructor, personalize it a little bit, just give them a short 1 or 2 minute video. This is what we're talking about this week. And usually they're in my house or in my backyard. And on Sunday afternoon, I do the video, you know, and I try to update them every year or two. And but one student said those were not even remotely helpful because they didn't go with the slide set or whatever. You know, I can talk over the slides, but how boring is that?
So just for your own information, ignore the student. Because I've actually done research on this. Not just like so one student voice don't talk. Research
Yeah.
shows, first of all, it shows that your backyard and your house is perfect. They really like that. Like that. They don't like a professional in a studio.
My office, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one thing that's important. Like especially if you get an animal to walk through, that's like the best ever.
Yeah, the dog is usually barking in the background, yeah.
That's awesome. You know,
Okay.
that's super important. And so don't stop doing it.
Okay.
And then the other thing that our research showed was that for distance students that really matters. And seeing your face
Yeah,
and seeing
okay.
how to become a person when when you take those away, then sometimes they'll say things like, well, whoever taught the class. Or
Yeah, that was kind of,
and so, this person, and you will take these students like, I don't think they're helpful, but they're a very small minority.
right, they didn't say so, yeah. I can almost tell you who that student was.
And usually you can't.
And he's a non-traditional, already has a master or a bachelor's degree in international something, and is looking at either grad school or a second bachelor's. And he's lived all around the world, and it was an introductory class, but he wanted 5,000 level stuff. And I had a terrible time with him. I'd say, I'm really glad that you're so interested, but that's way beyond what we do in this course. And he had a terrible time trying. And so there was a lot of stuff in this class that he just hated because it was.
Then don't watch.
Yeah, they're not, yeah.
If they're not useful at all, then don't watch.
So yeah, that was, kind of mine. So I kind of read that and went, well, I don't know about that. Good, okay. I like doing them, they're fun. It just takes a couple minutes, and they're easy to do within the YO courses system, which I love. I love that feature. So, okay, thank you. I feel better now. Okay. Yeah, they're not, I'm not going to win an Emmy for them, that's for sure.
That's the thing. The research that I did showed that I did research where I took video of a faculty member, like in a professional setting, like a studio. And they did some of the videos that way. This is one class. And then they did some of the videos as filming a class they were teaching, an on-campus class they were teaching, film that. And then we did the ones where they did like what you do, right? With the video on the computer, like, and it was overwhelming. They liked that one the best. And they liked it the best because they felt like you were talking to them.
Connected.
Right? You were talking to them, and it's not like some kind of big studio thing. And like I said, if you have an animal walk around, that's the best ever. Cat walks across the board, is the best thing that happens ever in video. I'm not kidding. Especially the cat.
Oh, funny. Yeah, we like the cat.
Like that, right? Like,
oh, yeah. And they want to be on the computer as you're, yeah. Okay, well, that's good to hear, because that's been my theory, and I had read in, pieces like that said anything you can do to personalize it, especially with an online class, so that they know there's an actual body of being there, do it. So that's why I do the short videos.
More detailed instructions and stuff. Consider doing videos of you demoing stuff.
At that, ooh.
Right? I mean, we have
yeah, right. Video the instructions. Yeah.
A video.
This is how you do this.
In front of a river or sort of waterfall with like sticks and pine cones, and she makes water.
Right.
They love it. Like that.
Okay. That's another really good idea.
So,
Yeah.
because I think it's all hands-on. Maybe going through.
Oh, that's easy. Yeah, because I do these things all the time. So. That's a really good. I did. One thing I did do too was when I was great scoring some of these, rather than type in a bunch of comments, I actually did videos and said, so I could say, Madison, great job, or Madison, this was missing, or yeah. Oh, okay. But there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, if you see something, just make an instructional video.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good idea too. Sorry, I didn't offer that to you. I really have no idea if I'll have a TA next fall. I really don't know.
I see limitless possibilities when traveling around with your kids and stuff, right? And you can be all kinds of places with all kinds of different things. Just have somebody video on your phone. Video, and maybe you could just, of you doing something.
Yeah.
Even if it's like talking about, it may not have to do with the lab, maybe you just have to talk about, talking about plan structure, and you're actually demoing that to a group of stuff. But that extension stuff needs to be more out in the.
Yeah, definitely field oriented. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay. Great ideas. See, this is really helpful. I don't know if it helped you, but it sure helped me. Yeah. No, I love teaching. And the online thing, it kind of evolved over the years, and I obviously much prefer the classroom, but it does have its place, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. And I tend to do that. I don't do a lot of videos for the on-campus classes, but I could. They get tired of seeing me, so, which is why we do field trips. Right. Sure. Yeah. And I do show videos and include links on, on the website for the other courses. Because there's a plethora of really good stuff on YouTube. You have to kind of comb through it to find the good stuff, but a lot of it is, but there is some really useful stuff on there. And some of the .com companies actually have really good resources because they cater to professional growers, and so those I do use, those types of .coms I will use, and they often have videos and that kind of thing too. So there's a bunch of resources out there. Yeah. Anything else? Geez, we took virtually the whole time. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your attention, and my contact, you're welcome to stop in or email or call or whatever. My saying is that if I'm in the office, my door's open. So I do have office hours, which are actually now. But I'm usually very lonely during office hours. They don't come in for office hours. But having said that, if I'm in, my door is open. So I'm usually happy to talk to anybody who happens to stroll by. So thank you so much for your attention. And I've got some really great ideas here. This is good.